Good morning, FBC. How many of you guys are missing church right now? Missing gathering together and coming physically to church with one another? I know I am. I miss you guys. I miss hanging out with you. I miss talking with you. I miss seeing people's faces and interacting and hugging and all the cool things that we used to be able to do. It's a difficult season. And it's one of those things that I know, at least for me, and I hope it's the same way for you, you can't wait for the time that we can come back together and finally physically gather together for worship. That's an exciting thing. It's like we're missing something right now, aren't we? I get that feeling. You know, it's interesting when I read through Psalm 122, I see that we aren't the only ones who missed gathering together and who love and long to do that. In fact, this psalm, which was written by David, it's one of the songs of the Ascents. David, he wrote this, and it was all about that gathering together at the temple for worship that the people were so excited to do. It says in the beginning, I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet have been standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. They're waiting and ready to gather together and worship. And just to remind you a little bit about the context, remember, David was king of Israel. He reigned from Jerusalem, and in Jerusalem, up the hill, there was a temple. And often the people would go and gather together. In fact, it talks about the tribes gathering. It says, Jerusalem has built a city that is bound firmly together, to which the tribes go up, as was decreed for Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. That was what they do. They would gather together and they would ascend that hill and worship the Lord at the temple, because that's where the presence of God was. That was the house of the Lord. And the people longed to do that. And so that was why they were excited. And I want you to know I'm excited too, to gather together with you and to worship. I almost feel like I'm missing something. But you see, what's interesting is David here, he refers to the temple as the house of the Lord. And sometimes we refer to the church as the house of the Lord too. I've heard people say that. I've said that myself. But I just want to challenge you with one thing this morning, with some of our thinking. We may be missing the fellowship with each other. We may be missing the opportunity to see each other's faces and to gather together publicly to worship. But one thing we're not missing is we're not missing the Lord. You see, the house of the Lord no longer is a place where we have to physically go to encounter God. Under this new covenant, the house of the Lord, now God resides within us, in our hearts. In my heart, and if you're following Jesus in your heart, the very presence of God, He lives, He dwells, He resides. In fact, Peter, he picks up on this idea. He talks about collectively the church. And he says this in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 5. He says, you yourselves are like living stones, and you are being built up into a spiritual house to be holy, a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. In fact, Jesus is later called the chief cornerstone. So what that means is we, the church, the people, not the building, we are the place where God dwells. We are the house of God. We're the dwelling place of God. And as we together are unified and being built up, that's the dwelling place of God. And so while the truth is I'm missing you guys, and I hope that you miss me too, we're not missing God. Even through this season, as difficult as it may be, we can rejoice in the fact that the very presence of God, He goes with us. And as we worship from home, through the screens, we're not able to gather physically, still, God is with us. His presence is there. The house of the Lord is dwelling right here, right? Because God's presence is within us. And so in the meantime, I just want to challenge you with that and to rejoice in the fact that God's with us. And as we wait to gather together, one quick word of encouragement, just take time, maybe this morning, maybe right now, to pray for peace, to pray for God to continue to work, because we are excited about the time we can gather. In fact, David, he goes on to say this in verse 6. He says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they be secure who love you, peace within your walls and security within your towers. And so for us in this country and the season we're in, it's difficult because we can't do what we want, but we can pray and we can look forward to the day where we can gather together again. We who are the very dwelling place of God, and all together in one place we can worship the Lord.